Say hello to the Book of Mormon. Ben Brantley of the New York Times says the Book of Mormon is the best musical of this century. Winner of 9 Tony Awards, including Best Musical. The Book of Mormon. Performances begin February 12th at Robinson Performance Hall. Visit celebrityattractions.com.
Good afternoon, Max Brantley with the Arkansas Times on Tuesday, February the 5th. Well, a small roadblock this afternoon in the state Senate for Governor Asa Hutchinson's income tax cut bill, a bill that overwhelmingly favors rich taxpayers. It passed in the Senate 25-5, but it needed 27 votes for passage because it has a small tax increase in it. Thus, it needed a 3/4 vote. There were 5 Democrats who voted against it. Significantly, there were 2 Republicans who could expected to be supporters of this bill who didn't vote today. The vote was expunged. There'll be another bill. It was sort of a brief but interesting debate. Will Bond, a Democrat from Little Rock, first of all tried to amend the bill to take out a cut in the top marginal income tax rate bracket from 6.9 to 5.9%, just for those people making $450,000 a year. That's the richest 1% of Arkansas taxpayers. He said if we left the top rate in place for them, it would save $73 million in the cost of this tax-cutting bill, and that'd be good for state services. But $73 million, by the way, is 73% of the benefit of the whole tax bill going to 1% of the taxpayers. Well, that motion was defeated on a voice vote by the Republican-dominated Senate. There was a good debate that followed with a number of Democrats saying that we were starving state services by cutting taxes this much. Keith Ingram was one, Joyce Elliott was another, Linda Chesterfield was another. They talked about the needs in many areas, talked about us being in a race with West Virginia to being the poorest educated state in the country. And Ingram particularly said he didn't want to leave the impression that we could afford these tax cuts, that somehow we were meeting all our other needs. We have one of the lowest paid state police forces in the country. Rural fire departments are hurting. We need more pre-K education. The sentiment for those sorts of things falls to tax cuts. Jim Hendren, the floor leader for Republicans, the governor's nephew, said we've already cut taxes for poor people and it's now time to give the rich some money. And he insists, as the governor does, that we'll get a lot more industrial development if we have a top tax rate that's the same or lower than those in our surrounding states. They've not produced any solid evidence of this, but it's an article of faith. There was going to be a hot debate this morning in a House Judiciary Committee meeting, but it didn't happen because they deferred for the time being a Stand Your Ground bill. This is the bill that eliminates the need to retreat under the self-defense law that we have on the books already and lets you open fire on somebody if you can say you feel threatened. This has led to increasing homicide rates in other states and a lot of controversial cases where people have been killed and didn't get to testify against their shooters, claim that they were somehow a threat to them. Perhaps this indicates some resistance to this bill. I'd hope so. I think there are at least some prosecutors in the state who think this would be a bad change in the law. We've got a strong self-defense law. I'm not aware of anybody who's ever been wrongly accused of standing up in self-defense to someone and firing a gun, but the gun nuts seem to think we need more. Wendell Griffen, outspoken pastor and judge who's a frequently controversial figure, has written an article for the Baptist Press on the Ralph Northam case. He said Northam should step down, but he said we shouldn't miss the larger point that white supremacy and support of white supremacy by white politicians is a problem throughout the United States, and we all need to have a discussion about it. He singled out Governor Asa Hutchinson for having attended a segregationist college and putting forward education policies that tend to harm black people. He said we all need to discuss this and need a little less tolerance for white supremacy and not just from Ralph Northam, the Virginia governor. Ethics reform legislation, we got to look at some of the details late yesterday afternoon after they were introduced in the morning. They don't do much. They address very little of actual violations. They increase some fines and penalties, but they haven't been very much enforced even at the lower levels in any event. But one thing that's really bad that I've discovered in reading this bill is it seems to open up more uses of campaign spending in ways that seem to be personal in nature. It would allow people to take campaign money and take themselves and spouses and staff members to out-of-state conferences of a very general political nature. This doesn't sound like ethics reform to me, but there's more yet to be learned about this. A sad story out of Fayetteville over the weekend. A University of Arkansas student was killed in a crosswalk on campus by a 17-year-old driver who apparently was using a wireless device, either texting or using a phone. In theory, 17-year-old people aren't allowed to use wireless devices while driving, and the driver got a citation. But it's interesting, we're having a legislative session where there's going to be one limited effort to discourage use of wireless devices in school zones. I think if it's not safe to use a wireless device in a school zone, it's probably not safe to use it anywhere else. But we seem to hold our phones just about as holy as we hold guns now in Arkansas. So a European-style law that prohibits handheld or non-handheld phone use while driving seems a long shot in Arkansas. But we can keep trying. We can continue to resist and go into that dark night. I'm Max Brantley. I'll be back tomorrow.